There is a very contained psychosis in the middle of someone who's normal otherwise.
Yep.
And that psychosis is I can be perfect, right? That I've got
Yes.
somehow the ability or should have the ability to be perfect. And
completely broken from reality. Completely.
Totally. And it binds anxiety. See, I think that idea surfaced as a solution to who do I have to be? What do I have to do to ensure I'm going to be okay in this world?
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast. I'm Tom Rutledge, and with me, as always, is our wonderful producer, Patrick Newman. And I believe you're in San Diego today, Patrick. I think you're taking time off from a vacation to talk to us. And Dr. Alan Berger.
Great to see you guys.
Boys doing?
Yeah, well, I'm just celebrating my 3-year dating anniversary with my girlfriend. It's been just a wonderful time, best relationship I've ever had. And I'm just happy that we can take a little time off to do some fun stuff and, see some new sights. We went to the San Diego Zoo yesterday, and I was maybe like 6 inches away from a gorilla as he ate from a branch. And
wow,
that's exactly the kind of, that's the reason I wanted to go to the zoo. I wanted to see some of nature as much as I can, where I can. Yeah. While I still can.
Mm-hmm. Well, so 3 years in your relationship, since our subject today is going to be about perfectionism, have you done it perfectly? Have you and Maddie done this perfectly?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely not.
I love his answer. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely not. Yeah, no.
But definitely in it to win it. And, it's been a beautiful time, beautiful relationship. I'm lucky to be in it and, working on it with someone.
Well, one of the wonderful things that we can finally do in a sobriety, right? We don't have to actually know. And Alan, you're always the one telling me this. I hear you telling us this all the time. It's like, you don't wait till you have it all together before you get into a relationship. You basically discover, and this is certainly my story with Didi is, we were still both two drinking alcoholics when we got into our relationship. So we've walked through this stuff, together, but you got to find somebody always tell people, find somebody who's introspective and willing to grow. And there's your person you can be in a relationship with.
That's right. That's right. So last night I got to have some fun yesterday. Two things happened. I got to see my dear friend Roger, who's been really struggling lately, and it was good to see him. And he seems to be adjusting well to his new life. And then I got to go to a comedy night. That's they called it Catskills in Stockton. Stockton, New Jersey is just over the river, over the Delaware River, about 10 minutes from where I live. And this deli, Borscht Deli, puts on this comedy night once a month. And he brings in a lot of Jewish comedians. So, right, it's a Borscht Deli. He brings in the Jewish comedian.
Yeah, perfect.
So before the show started, I had the best pastrami sandwich I've ever eaten in my whole life. I mean, it mouth-watering, melt in your mouth pastrami. It was delicious. So I'll share with you 2 jokes about relationships.
Okay, all right.
So this guy got together with his rabbi, and he says, "Rabbi, I'm very, very concerned about my relationship with my wife." And he says, "Well, tell me about your concern. What are you concerned about?" I don't know if I'm paranoid or what, but I think she's trying to poison me. He says, she's trying to poison you. He says, yeah, I just get this feeling that she's just trying to poison me. He says, all right, let me talk to your wife. So he says, Rabbi, I'd appreciate it if you could get to the bottom of what's going on here. So a week later, the guy calls. So he says, Rabbi, did you talk to my wife? He says, yeah, I've been meaning to give you a call. I just talked to her today. He says, well, how did it go? I was on the phone with her for 3 hours. He goes, God, you guys talked about a lot. He says, yeah, I think you should take the poison.
It's all about perspective, man.
I was cracking up with that. That was such a good one. So this is this guy and his wife. They're sitting on the back porch, and they're living on a farm here in Pennsylvania, just looking at the beautiful landscape and the sun's setting. I mean, it's like a perfect evening. The spring evenings that they don't get any better. Mm-hmm. And his wife is sitting there, and then all of a sudden she says, I really need you, and I really love you so much. And the guy starts to well up with tears. And he turns to his wife and he says, honey, that's one of the sweetest things you've ever said to me. She says, I was talking to my glass of wine.
But he was eavesdropping. It's like,
I was talking to my glass of wine. I need you and I love you. I couldn't live without you. I can.
But Alan, at the risk of sounding like two old therapists here talking, but the first joke, I mean, I immediately, and I know you've experienced this too, where this is one of the reasons we learn as we go through to when we're working with somebody individually, where there's any kind of relational issues in there. Well, we want to meet that spouse, not to do therapy as a couple, stuff like that. It's a perspective thing because it's because I've learned the hard way. Sometimes I can work with somebody for a really long time, and then some situation comes up and their spouse comes in, and I see an entirely different side of this person, and I'm going like, oh, I've been missing several points here.
I got 2 more jokes that I think.
Okay, good.
So be Billy Jokester Day on the social support.
I texted you both this morning saying we're doing a show on perfectionism. For God's sake, don't do it perfectly. So, because I know you both needed to be warned about that. So you're doing fine, Alan. You're doing great. Just tell jokes.
So this woman's married to this 92-year-old guy, and they live up on this penthouse, the 10th floor on this high rise, right on Wilshire Boulevard. You know where that's at. All those Jewish high rises and stuff like that. And she walks in the house and she hears all of this kind of erotic noise coming from the bedroom. She goes back there, and her 92-year-old husband is having sex. Fucking this gal, and she enjoying that. And she goes and grabs his little skinny ass and throws him out the window. And he dies. Mm-hmm. So she's now arrested for murder. Mm-hmm. She gets arraigned in front of the judge, and the judge says, okay, Mrs. Warrenberg, mm-hmm. You threw your husband out of the work. You're being, charged for murder. What do you have to say for yourself? You going to admit that you murdered him? I didn't murder him. He goes, what do you mean? You threw him out the window. Your Honor, I thought if this 92-year-old guy could fuck like that, he could fly.
What a way to go.
These are complex jokes.
One more. This last.
Okay.
So this guy goes to his rabbi. Rabbi, look, I'm just not performing like I used to perform. I'm an older man now, and I know that the Talmud has something to tell me about, what we can do in a situation that as a Jewish man, I'm responsible for my wife's happiness, and I'm just not pleasing her in bed anymore. I'm just having trouble performing. So the rabbi thinks for a minute and starts to go through his Talmud and says, there is some advice in here. He says, but, you're going to have to be willing to do this. And are you willing to do anything to try to deal with this problem? Guy said, of course. we're really desperate at this point in time. We want to find a solution. He says, I want you to find a very, very handsome young man. And I want you to bring him back to your house. And when you and your wife are having sex, I want him to be waving a towel. Are you willing to do this? Of course I am. Of course I am. So they go find some guy and say, hey, we'll pay you $100 and, will you come in and stand over us while we're having sex and wave this towel? And so they do it. And there's no difference. The guy still has trouble performing. Goes back to the rabbi. Rabbi, we tried that. It didn't work. Now, is there anything else that I can do? He says, well, yes, there is. He says, I want you to go back. And this time, I want you to change roles. You wave the towel, let the guy have sex with your wife. So the guy goes and he's just waving the shit out of this towel, and his wife is having the time of her life, and she starts to have a 7-minute orgasm. And the guy goes back to the rabbi, says, Rabbi, that was a very important experience. He says, well, what happened? Guy's having sex with my wife. He gets up and I looked at him and say, hey, putz, this is how you wave a goddamn towel.
That is a beautiful, again, a complicated story about narcissism. It's like that.
It's like, if you waved it like this, I would have been fine.
That's right.
Jesus Christ.
Nothing to do with him. Ultimately, it's about the.
But anyway,
all about how you wave the towel is the expression.
Sandwich and a lot of good laughs last night. And these were world-class comedians. And back in the days when Frank Sinatra was around, the Catskill Mountains out here on the East Coast is where all these guys would go perform. Yeah. And all of these brilliant comedians, Don Rickles and that whole group, would come up to the Catskill Mountains and they would have these shows. And these were
the tradition goes on. I love that.
Tradition is going on. So I had a good time. But look, it's in one way, perfectionism is a laughing matter. In another way, it's not. Because when you are struck by this curse, it's a friggin' curse. Mm-hmm. And going unchecked can lead people to take their lives. Mm-hmm. I had a very, very person that's very close to me. His name is Chris. And recently, I'd say recently, it feels very recent, about 1 year and 3 months ago now, he took his life. And I have never met someone that was so driven by his perfectionism as I met Chris. And if you met Chris, I mean, first of all, he's like this perfect specimen of a guy. He's like a Greek god, an Adonis. I mean, his body had probably 7% body fat, if that much. He was a clinician and worked with me, and he was in my training group. And he had a perfect diet. He'd prepare all his food for the week and he would bring it in and he would just eat stuff that was just ultra healthy. He'd be in the gym 5 days a week. He was cut. And when he was in my training group, he was the best damn student you could have. Worked his ass off, understood this stuff, went way beyond what any other student did in terms of integrating concepts. Got this stuff like nobody else got it.
Right. I knew Chris. It's like I met Chris at our first point of intervention workshop, and got to be with him some of the time. And also one of the kindest people. I didn't know him as well as you did, but he sure seemed to be one of the kindest people in the world. Always, every time I met him, he's one of those people that basically he always had lots of stuff, as you're talking about, got going on for him. But the focus he had anytime he saw me after however long it had been was how are you doing? What are you working on? What are you up to? He showed just an immediate interest in me. And he was just such a, it was just one of those people that you like to be around.
But just great guy, wonderful and brilliant clinician. He worked with a lot of kids, like teenagers, right, that were into sports and stuff. Because
he would have been wonderful at that. Absolutely,
he was so good. I mean, these kids would just fall in love with him. He was so creative in terms of his work with them. He applied these Gestalt things and had them doing chair work. I mean, he was amazing. But he was a perfectionist. And if he felt like he failed someone, he was so hard on himself. It was really hard for him to separate out failing from making a mistake and learning from the mistake. It was very much, he turned a mistake into that I'm a mistake instead of it just being a mistake. He was so fused, right, with the outcome of his behavior, which is what tormented him as an athlete. He was so focused on performing at this, super high level, which he could do because he was a naturally gifted athlete, fantastic athlete. But the perfectionism undermined that part of his life. He ended up turning to alcohol and drugs in his life is what I think is a way of dealing with this stuff. But the thing that sent him over the edge, and I never realized this, and I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to talk with him about it, is he had a fat deposit underneath his left pectoral muscle. And when he took his shirt off, you could see that there was an anomaly on the left side of his body. It wasn't perfectly symmetrical. Well, he researched to find the best plastic surgeon he could find to correct this anomaly. And he went to the surgeon, and the surgeon did his thing. Chris, we found this out later when somebody was able to get in his computer, was furious with the surgeon. He would be writing him memos about, look at these pictures. And so Chris would send him a picture when he was like in his teens, now just before the surgery and after the surgery, with his shirt off, right? He says, look at what you did to me. You deformed me. I'm deformed. How can I ever take off my shirt again with a woman and ever feel good about myself? I saw the pictures. I saw no difference.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing. He saw that he was malformed, that he was deformed by the surgery and could not let it go, and eventually hung himself. And I mean, even in hanging himself, it was an amazing thing. He got the message. He tried to hang himself. He had the wrong belt. The first time he put it on his nose, put it on the pipe, and he went to hang himself, the belt buckle broke off.
Yeah.
And because he was a perfectionist, what was he going to do? I'm going to find the right belt. Not, oh my God, here's the message. Maybe the message is rethink this. Pause for a minute, right? Let me think. And he just came out of spending a week at Sierra Tucson working on this stuff. Sending me messages, man, I think I'm getting a handle on this perfectionism and da, 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 da. I mean, that's how insidious this process can be. So when we say, in one way, it's humorous, because even the thought that we can be perfect is so absurd. What was it? One of your little nutshells was, I was just reading it today when you sent it to me. I love your nutshells. I always love it.
I don't remember. I knew I sent you some on perfectionism. I can't remember what they were, but I mean,
you said this is that perfectionists waste a lot of time and energy believing they're supposed to be something that is humanly impossible.
That's it. Yeah.
That's so absurd, right? Perfectionists are not having nearly as much fun as they could have.
That's right.
I mean, they can't, because everything is so damn serious for them. Everything, like I said with Chris, this stuff was a life and death matter.
Well, and to the degree that you're talking, and again, like everything else, you want to, when we're working with people, when we're looking at ourselves, you want to do a personal assessment, a personal inventory about where your perfectionism is. And when you're talking about somebody that is that lost in it as Chris was, it's And I see a lot of that in eating disorder. Not, I don't think eating disorder people have a corner on that market, but eating disorder people often have a real battle with this. Long ago, I began to say, to people who came to me for help with eating disorder is, okay, well, I need to warn you ahead of time that there is no such thing as eating disorder recovery without recovering from perfectionism. It's like it can't be done. It's like we're going to have to do both of those things, and at that level, it becomes, even when you talked about him looking in the mirror and seeing something that you and I couldn't possibly see, it's, I think about the body dysmorphia that's
right.
so often that eating disorder people have. And it's like one of the things I've learned about from them and to teach their families is, no, there's no amount of staring at the mirror that's going to make them see what you see. It's like, I call it actually psychotic. And Chris obviously had this. I call it psychotic experience in non-psychotic people. It's like the person does not qualify. They're not psychotic. They can't be diagnosed as psychotic, but what they actually can see and sometimes kinesthetically experience inside their body is completely broken from reality. It's delusional, and the idea is that it is humanly impossible. And it's, to me, we talk about the multiplicity and the different characters in our heads and stuff. This is one of the best examples of just what I think of is just the best way to think about it is just straight out possession. This is best thought of as a possessing entity because you're talking about Chris, and I'm learning even more as you're talking about today. He's there. He's fighting back. It's not that he's not trying. He's actually Sarah Tucson continuing to work on it and stuff like that. But it's like this is one of the reasons we try to help people to differentiate themselves from these. In this case, it's not just, we work with it however is going to be best for the person, but it's like in this case, I go like, this is not another part of your authentic person that we need to figure out how to take care of. This is a possessing demon. This is a very destructive belief system that is going to hold you accountable to this unreachable goal always, and you're saying it can kill you. And one of my little nutshells about perfectionism is, it's like perfectionism can kill you, and between now and then, it's going to take all the fun out of your life.
That's right.
You're not going to have any joy in life. It's like it will ruin your life. It's not, in this case, we're taking the slant on that right now that it's like, and from this angle, there is nothing funny about it.
No. And then it gets to what function does this really play in our life, right? Because where did this come from? How come? Well, we do know that there's a cultural influence. We always are looking at the perfect score, right? If somebody gets the perfect score, it's amazing, right? Like the 10, when a 10 was achieved in gymnastics, it was considered, oh my God, was a 10 ever possible? And we're looking for always the perfect performance, like March Madness is going on right now. These teams are trying to play up to to a level of perfectionism so they win the tournament. I just love John Wooden, one of the greatest college basketball coaches that ever lived. And he says, perfectionism is a curse. He says, what I want my players to do is to know that if they give their best effort, whether they win or lost the game, that they were winners. See, that's the kind of bulletproof concepts that we need to have that is based on what we can do to create the experience, not what's going to happen out there. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece, let's go back to this function. What does perfectionism do? How is it that in our culture, everybody develops it to one degree or another? Every one of us has a perfectionist inside of us. Like you said, it's when you're dealing with an eating disorder person, we could even say, they don't have an eating disorder. They have a perfectionism disorder, what they do. And it's attached itself to their food and their body, right? They've now put all the energy to being perfect towards, managing how they look. If let's say that they're anorexic or bulimorexic or bulimic. But we see that attached.
Or yeah, I was just going to say, or even the other thing is you get into talking with people with eating disorders, even they talk about the impossible. They become the exception to science. It's like they believe they're supposed to, that the rules of well, other people need to eat this much in order to be okay. I don't.
That's right.
I've had medical doctors as clients who can sit there and tell you, I mean, totally sane with this broken from reality psychotic belief is like, if somebody came into my office and was experiencing this, I would know what to tell them. And I would tell them this. It's like, when they got to the place where they could actually differentiate and be aware, they go like, but I don't believe it. I believe what the eating disorder tells me or what the perfectionism tells me. Yeah. And it's like, and we need to, and I guess one of the things too, we need to realize, and when we're dealing with other people, just friends or whatever, it's like that because you're right. We can, and we can do this. We do the same thing sometimes. It's like, but you can laugh it off and think, well, perfectionism, it's just kind of a lightweight word for, it's a lightweight word for what we talk about a lot of times, which is self-hatred. Yes. It is self-hatred. It's not self-criticism. It's not even I finally found out that for dealing with some of that for myself, that self-condemnation began to feel like an understatement too. So, that's when, landing on self-hatred was the most validating thing that could happen for me. Is a strange thing to say was good news, but it's like the idea that once you can't solve a problem that you can't define. And once I was able to call it that and have somebody get it, that I literally had deep hatred for myself, then I could start to get out of there. So it's like we want people not to minimize it by saying, "Oh, just perfectionism," or I'm just with that kind of stuff. It's like, no, if you have this and you're not getting help for it, reach out.
Right on. And look, I want to elaborate on what you said. See, that what I call that you just described, Tom, is claiming special status. That I don't know if anybody else can do it, but I'm going to be perfect. Yep. Somehow I have been the anointed one, right? Mm-hmm. I will be the one person that finally can pull this perfectionism thing off. Mm-hmm. And we have that. And everybody has this degree of special status that they think that somehow the like you said, the realities of the givens of being a human being do not apply to them.
Right. Well, and let me say this piece, because I think there are people too that could hear what you're saying, and there's a little caveat that goes with it, and that is sometimes you may not even believe that you are the exception to the rule, that you can do it, but you do believe you're the exception to the rule, that it is required of you.
That's right.
It's like other people don't have to do it. If you ask them point blank, do you think you're going to be able to pull it off? They might tell you, no, I don't. But and then you ask them, why don't I have to do that? It's because that's special status. It's like, because you're not me. Yeah. It's that negative arrogance we talk about.
Well, that's exactly the negative. I was going to just say that. It's exactly what you're talking about. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about.
Right.
It's that negative arrogance. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. I'm not much, but I'm sure that's all you're thinking about is me. I mean,
yeah.
I've never been able to placate or satisfy the perfectionist voice in me. And I don't know what the experience is like for others, but I've also never credited it with encouraging me towards any desired outcome or positive outcome. It's always been the opposite. It's always been the perfectionist urge has discouraged me from accomplishing anything that my heart sets itself on doing. And so I feel like whenever I'm, engaged in any productive activity, I literally need to take the perfectionist and put him in a chair in the other room because he's not there's no supervision that I'm getting that is going to help me to get to a higher plateau.
Say more about how he not only does it help motivate, does it help encourage, but actually I can't remember your exact word, discourages or he works against you. Say more about that.
Yeah. Well, I think especially in my using and drinking days, I think that I was hearing there's a lot of interior dialogue about, well, it's not going to be perfect, or it's not going to match up with your ideal of how a thing should be, whatever that thing is. So you might as well not try. And, here's some pills you can take while you don't try. Yeah.
Right. I actually had somebody, I heard a therapist working with a client one time refer to that as advanced perfectionism. We were working in a group, and a co-therapist of mine, we were talking about giving examples of perfectionism. And this one person said, "Oh, I don't even try." And she said, "Oh, advanced perfectionism," and it's like, because if you think about it, what is discouragement trying to do? Discouragement is if we personify discouragement, it's trying to take us to hopeless, because if I can get you to hopeless, then you'll stop trying. And then I'm, God knows why that's what motivates that, but it's like, it's not from the bigger picture. It really is some aberrant coping mechanism gone awry. It's like, it's like we can always look back and find out how, we always make sense. It came in there somewhere, but at this point it's toxic, it's poisonous, it's cancerous. And it's, you better put it in the other room. And keep putting it in the other room, because as the three of us know, we can put any one of these inner culprits in the other room, and they'll, whether it be right away or a little bit later, they'll come walking back in. It's like, and what we're saying is that's okay, as long as you know who it is. This is what we're teaching people. This is how you recover from perfectionism. Know what it is so that you understand when it speaks. You're not tuning in, because see, that's the thing. These voices, whether it be our alcoholism, whether it be our self-hatred or perfectionism, when they speak, we have a tendency to really they have such credibility with us. We tune in. And what we got to do is, I tell people, we learn to differentiate these voices, these characters in our head, these demons, so that you know who to ignore.
Yeah.
That's the point is, because sometimes I'll be saying, who is that talking? Who is that talking? And then we get to a certain place and I'll go, I don't care what your eating disorder has to say. They'll go, wait, you spent the last 6 months making me tell you what the eating disorder said. Well, yeah, I wanted to be sure you knew who the eating disorder was. So, who to ignore, who to tell to fuck off. One of the things we call it in my office, we call it putting the fuck you in the right place. It's like, big clinical jargon there. It's like, we've been pointing that fuck you at ourselves all this time. And that's what perfectionism does. And we want to go like, no, I'm pointing that right back out, and you're not going to destroy it, but it gives you space, a right amount. A little bit of anger is good here, because anger fuels boundaries. Anger says, no. It's like, you have to, you won't be able to do this exactly right, Patrick, so you might as well not try it. It's like, you get separate. You go, fuck you. I'm not even trying to do it exactly right. I'm just doing it because it's the next thing to do, or I'm just doing it because I think it might be fun, or I'm just doing it because Alan told me it would be a good idea. And that's enough.
Exactly.
I think I got a little emotional. I got carried away there.
Yes.
No, I
have a lot of feelings about this. I really do. Yeah.
Oh, well, listen, you and I have seen it destroy so many people that we care about.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the three people that I've worked with that I know of that have taken and committed suicide, two of which I worked with at one point. They weren't my clients at the time that this happened. They had the same thing Chris had. I see that pattern, this impenetrable, quest for perfectionism. And no matter what happened, no matter what experiences, no matter how many times they were challenged by it, they couldn't let it go. Now, some people, like you said, are able to get to the point where they put the fuck you in the right place and are able to tell that part, just like some people in recovery. When the addict self starts to tell them, hey, let's go, we'd say, no thanks, tequila boy. I'm not interested today.
Right.
Maybe visit with me tomorrow. We'll talk about it then. But today, no deal. it's a recovery decision that you and I talk about.
Yeah. And sometimes it comes right down to productive, positive procrastination is what you just described. I was so happy when I got into recovery and somebody told me that recovery is based on procrastination, because I thought, oh, good, finally a positive thing. It's like, so sometimes I'll say like, I just haven't gotten around to my next drink for the last 36 years, right. And I'm not going to do it today. So it's like, I'm going to put that off. It's like, I still struggle with procrastination, but there are some ways it really works.
See, I've often started to really believe this to be true, is that this idea, which I think is a psychotic idea. I really like how you said that there is a very contained psychosis in the middle of someone who's normal otherwise.
Yep.
And that psychosis is I can be perfect, right? That I've got somehow the ability, or should have the ability, to be perfect. And
completely broken from reality. Completely.
And it binds anxiety. See, I think that idea surfaced as a solution to who do I have to be? What do I have to do to ensure I'm going to be okay in this world? And so somehow, out of all of the possibilities, that became the one thing a person focused on. If I grab a hold of this will be the key to the kingdom, right? This will be the key to my kingdom. And so I'm going to get a hold of this key called perfectionism, and I'm going to bring it close to me in whatever way it means. You and I have seen it manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Being perfectionistic is very relative to each person. One person would look at somebody who's got a perfectionism in a way to get, and we would say, that's not perfectionism for me.
Right.
It's going to be manifest itself different. But but remind everybody what it is, because that was another one of your perfection is not doing things perfectly.
No, it's not doing things perfectly. It's because people say, "Oh no, I'm not a perfectionist." You go like, "No, it's thinking, it's believing that you're supposed to do things perfectly," and it's like that's the psychotic belief. That's and by the way, if you're listening to this and you're experiencing this stuff, we're not calling you psychotic. We're not. We don't have MRIs to pick up these belief stuff. This is a way of imaging it. It's like to see that there is nothing. We're talking about people who, we may be neurotic as the day is long, but it's like we're not psychotic. It's like, but it's like in this middle little piece, if we define psychosis as broken from reality, of actually believing something that is simply not even close to being true and can be demonstrated as that, it's like, and you still believe it anyway, then it's like, and of course, what'll happen is that self-hater will take that and turn it against you too, because we'll beat ourselves up for beating ourselves up, and we'll hate ourselves for hating ourselves. It's like, fuck you to that. It's like, no way. It's like, if you're identifying with this, understand that it's really a weird thing, because if you're working with either Alan or I about this, we're going to ask you to suspend your own credibility in a way. I'm going to need you to disqualify your opinion about this for a little while, because you can't see, especially when we're talking about like things that we can actually see, and somebody can see and say, I see that with Chris, it's like what I would say that he needed to suspend he needed to stop trusting his vision.
Yeah.
Not just his opinion, his vision, his eyes weren't working. It's like it creates, we talk about hallucinations, we talk about delusions, but these are also illusions that we can get with body image things. I believe when somebody with an eating disorder has body dysmorphia looks in the mirror and they describe what they see, or they think they see this in themselves. What I've learned to do is I no longer, people try to talk them out of it all the time. We go like, I may point out occasionally to be sure they understand, I don't see what you see. But I don't believe I can convince you of that. What I want to convince you of is that you can't see yourself accurately. Yes. And that's true about personal characteristics as well as physical characteristics. It's like whatever it is you believe, we got to go. And this is one of the things that I love about what we've been doing with emotional sobriety, Alan, is it's the word I've been using more and more and more since we've been working together on this is investigation. I've been referring to my clients as co-investigators. We're looking into these things. We're trying to understand what this is. And so what we need to be able to do is not just not just identify that this is a problem, but try to and it's not hard for us from the outside to have compassion for the person with the problem, but it is really hard for the person who has it to have compassion for themselves. That's one of the things. And I think, and Patrick, I think you would probably validate that. I'll check it with you to see, is that the problem, a lot of the problem is that you haven't, before you get recovery, you don't have anybody in there to turn to in your own head who can say, it's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, it just exists as the truth, right?
That's exactly right. And I wasn't able to make any significant progress I've made so far until I first got sober and started this mental health overhaul, and since then I feel like I've loosened up a lot, and I've been able to get a lot more work done, and it's so paradoxical, but like in my loosening of perfectionist strictures, I've actually become a lot more quote unquote perfect in just the quality of my output, the amount of my output, and just the way I run my life is just so much tidier, so much happier. And it helped for me that I flamed out so hard that like I did that perfectionist did lose a lot of credibility with me. I think that, from batting against the window so many times, like the perfectionist voice does not have as much cachet with me as it used to, because it just didn't deliver the results, and it's an asshole, and I'm not really interested in as much in hearing what it has to say. It can still get in a few good licks every once in a while, but yeah.
That's a really good point, because one of the things about that, we're talking about the old standard hitting bottom, in recovery stuff. It's like there is a tremendous advantage to going way down to the bottom. It's like, I mean, there's no guarantees, because we can mess that up too. But one of the challenges of therapy, and of 12-step support, but therapy in particular, is helping people avoid having to flame out, is helping people be able to see the potential downside of this, how this might get worse, so that they can turn it around before they do that, because for one thing, it's dangerous and it's life threatening even to not, but it's, because it reminds me, and one of the things I remember from 12 steps from early on in my recovery is, whenever somebody says, well, at least I don't do so-and-so, at least I never did this, the old timers would always say, yet. You haven't done that yet. It's like, I heard it first with like somebody saying, well, at least I don't use needles, it's go like, well, yet. It's like, but it applies to all of this stuff too, at least I'm just still doing this. I don't feel this way. I'm doing okay. It's like, yeah, but when has this ever gone? When has this ever gotten better on its own? And it's like, it doesn't. We have to do it.
Well, and that will be the focus of our next show next week, is we're going to talk about what you can do when you start to become aware of some of the things that you and I have talked about today.
Good.
How to now take on your perfectionism.
All right. That sounds fun. I look forward to that.
Perfectly. No.
Do it radically and perfectly is what we're going to do.
That's right. That's what we want. That's what we're striving for.
Well, and bottom line is, it really is, when one thing doesn't work, you try another.
That's it.
We have to be something that we're not, and then we have to get it right. We don't have to get it right. We don't even have to get it. We can fuck it up. It's okay.
And you see it so early in kids, man. I mean, I obviously Jess and I are doing something to communicate it, but Cece, I'm on a tennis court with her yesterday. She's taking tennis twice a week. This club that's close to our house. And she throws the racket down and says, I can't do this.
Wow.
I mean, at 4 years old, she just turned 4. She's got this expectation of herself that she should just get up and hit that damn ball every time.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's right in there. And I remember Maddie having it. I mean, I just remember Maddie in a lot. I mean, I think the great thing with Maddie is I've seen her work through that so much. She's really got to the point now. It's, I'm not expecting that. I'm just going to work at it and I'll get better at it. And, and that's what I was encouraging. She said, yeah, it's hard right now. You keep trying it. You'll figure it out. I know you will. Let's try this now. And we tried something else and we were able to.
Well, and that's, and tell me if I'm, you're the expert on kids. I'm not. It's like, but the advantage of it showing up for Cece now is you get to start helping her through it.
Exactly. That's right on.
Practical solutions. Until next time.
Tend your life. Tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee. Bring some stories. Bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee. Bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.